And while India's Bollywood movie industry is well known throughout the world, some say it doesn't always get the recognition it deserves. My colleague Elaine Reyes asked Rajinder Dudrah about Bollywood's influence. Rajinder is a professor of cultural studies at Birmingham School of Media.
Actually, they're a growing influence. They're an influence across a number of sectors. Obviously, they're influential with its primary audience, so millions of people go to watch Bollywood films every day in India, but then also across the diaspora and its global market. But they're also influential in the sense of fashion, but also music. Lots of mainstream Bollywood films have songs and dance in them, so these could be anything 6, 7, or sometimes even more songs. And then you can imagine that people are, in the olden days, buying the albums or buying the cassettes, and now more recently watching these on YouTube and social media and downloading them as well. So it's not just influential in terms of the cinema, but it's also influential much more in terms of wider mass media and popular culture as well.
Well, India's film industry has grown by over 50% over the past 8 years, and by the end of the decade, it is projected to continue to grow. So what's behind this rise?
The media and entertainment industries in India have become almost a kind of a hub for the region. So here we're talking about the Indian subcontinent and the South Asia region. And from this, then, it really broadens out even further to across South Asia, Southeast Asia, but also across the diaspora as well. So this is where Indians and other South Asians are residing overseas in places like Europe, North America, Australasia, even China and the Middle East. But then also, people who are coming to this cinema are new as well. And the media and entertainment industries is also a growing industry in its own right. So this is where Bollywood is not just important as cinema, it's also important as television. We've seen Bollywood stars like Shah Rukh Khan, Preeti Zinta, who've also invested huge amounts of money in IPL, the Indian cricket leagues as well. And this is a growing segment, a creative industry segment in India and South Asia.
The number of people actually going to the movies fell in India from 2013 to 2014. Are more people just choosing to watch movies at home?
Yes, I think people are being more selective now, not least with India growing in terms of 24/7 media. It's fast catching up with what some of us might be used to in the West in terms of watching things at choice on our smart TVs or on our PCs and even on our mobile and tablets. So what's happening here is, I think, with the advent of new media and new technologies, this is certainly the case in India as well. So this might have had a knock-on effect to some cinema attendance going. But I think what will be interesting to see is that those numbers might certainly slump now, but they're also evidence that from 14, 15 onwards, they're on the rise again. So I think this is a case of cinema learning to coexist alongside new media technologies, but also we might see the resurgence of cinema, not least on download platforms on tablets and new media.
So how do Indian movie-going audiences compare to those in other major markets like the United States and China? And how do you see this developing in the future?
Well, Indian cinema audiences have historically been known to be much more boisterous and vociferous. This is changing slightly in some of the key urban centres, in the multiplexes, where I suppose clearly there's a more of a kind of a middle class or upper middle class audience that frequents those cinemas. And of course, those cinema tickets are perhaps out of the reach of the vast majority of Indian cinema going. But then in other centres, which are often classed as B centres or even C centres, and actually even the multiplex, which aren't, the same as or akin to what we might be used to in big urban centres of the West, people still clap, hoot, holler, shout and applaud the hero's entry when the heroine comes on, or there's a famous dialogue recital or one that they enjoy. People will make their appreciation quite vocal. And I think this is quite different to cinema going, say, in the West and even other parts of China, where we might just, be enjoying the film and we might be quiet. That's not to say we're not gaining the same pleasures, but we would be a bit more subdued and conservative or reserved. And those pleasures are a bit more internal, or we're respecting each other in the dark cinema auditorium. In India, the respect is somewhat different. The respect is about showing outward manifestation, and sometimes in some of these cinemas it's actually getting up and dancing in the aisles as well. So it's a very much a different cinema going culture, but also a habit in the actual auditorium itself.
All right, Professor Rajinder Dudrah, thank you so much for joining us.